Hey guys, welcome back to Yarny Box. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make these super cute little pumpkins. They're made with blanket yarn on an Addi 22 pin knitting machine. The color combinations are endless with these pumpkins. They make super cute little fall decor, or you can sell them really easily at markets, especially in multiples. They only take a few minutes to make, and the stems are made with cinnamon sticks, so they add a nice little rustic touch. So if you're interested in finding out how you can make them, keep watching. The first item that you'll need is an Addi 22 pin knitting machine. It doesn't have to be the Addi brand, but just make sure it's a smaller knitting machine. Anything under 30 pins should work okay. The next item you'll need is a yarn needle. I definitely recommend you use the one with a bent end like this. It's way easier to use in the knitting machines. I'm going to be using Bernat blanket yarn, but you can use any chenille yarn. You can actually even use acrylic yarn. It would just come out to be a way smaller pumpkin. And this is the color gold. And lastly, you'll need a cinnamon stick, and you can use a regular stick if you want, but the cinnamon stick does add a cute little touch. Before casting onto your knitting machine, leave a tail of about 12 inches in the center. And you're going to want to cast on exactly like normal, so that's in front of the first pin, behind the second, in front of the third, behind the fourth, and so on and so forth. If you don't know how to cast onto a knitting machine, there are tons of tutorials out there. It's the exact same way that you would cast on with acrylic yarn. Just make sure your initial cast on here is very, very, very loose, because blanket yarn is obviously way thicker and it can be harder to get through the machine. Once you're all casted on, you're going to want to pump out about 30 rows. You can do a bit fewer rows if you want. It's going to create a shorter, skinnier pumpkin. And if you do a little bit more rows, it's going to be a taller pumpkin. So I find 30 to be the magic number when it comes to blanket yarn, but you could definitely do a bit fewer or a bit taller if you want a bit of diversity in your pumpkin decor. If you're having any trouble at all with getting the yarn through the machine, just slow down a bit and make sure your tension is really loose and make sure the yarn is coming really easily from the yarn ball. You don't want to pull or force the yarn through at all with this machine, because blanket yarn is way thicker than acrylic yarn, so it can snap the needles pretty easily. So just make sure everything's coming out nice and smooth and you're not tugging on the yarn at all to get it through. I'm going to do the rest of my 30 rows off camera, and I'll meet you back here once you've gotten to 30 rows. So now that we're all done our 30 rows, we can cast off. I like to leave a yarn tail of about 3 feet before cutting it off. We're going to be using this tail to not only cast off, but also create the segments of the pumpkin. And casting off with blanket yarn is the exact same thing as if you were to do acrylic yarn with a hat or something like that. So we can start off by threading the yarn needle with our tail. So begin by removing the yarn from the tension machine. And you're just going to crank the handle over a little bit until one of the pins is unhooked from the yarn, and there's a little space there to place the needle into the loop. And then you're going to pull the yarn through the loop. And you're just going to repeat that all the way around the machine. So turn the handle a little bit, stick the needle in, and pull it through. This can be a little tricky with blanket yarn because the yarn can kind of get caught on the needle, so just go slow and make sure you're putting your yarn needle through every single loop around the machine. So just finishing up on our last loop here. Now that we're done with the machine, you can put it off to the side. The yarn is going to be really, really tight, so you're going to want to stretch it out quite a bit before turning it into a pumpkin. And now you can take one of the ends and pull the hole shut. So it works like a drawstring, like a hat would, and just be really careful here because blanket yarn snaps so easily, so be really gentle when you close it shut. Now it's time to add the stuffing, so break up the stuffing before you put it in the pumpkin, and I like to really shape out the pumpkin here. Make sure you really shape out the bottom and the oval shape of the pumpkin while you stuff. You want enough stuffing so the pumpkin is pretty firm, but not so much that it's showing through the holes. And then you can just pull the other side of the hole shut, and just make sure, again, you're doing it super gently. So now your pumpkin should look something like this. Now we're going to create the segments of our pumpkin, so thread your yarn needle with the longer tail of the two. And all you're going to do is you're going to lay the tail flat across one of the knitted rows here, just like this. Make sure it's quite in line or else it's going to come out wonky. And then just poke the needle right back through the other side of the pumpkin and pull super gently, again, because of the blanket yarn. And then you'll see it creates a nice little rivet in the pumpkin. So I like to go around the pumpkin and do this 5 times to make 5 segments. But you can do more or less segments just depending on how you want your pumpkin to turn out. Once you have the amount of segments that you're happy with, just poke the needle back through the other side so that both tails are coming out the same side of the pumpkin. And we're just going to double knot them to secure everything in place. Once you've knotted them, you can hide your tails in your pumpkin and trim them off. So now your pumpkin should look very pumpkin-y, and all we have to do is add the stem. I like to use a cinnamon stick, and I buy the 2 inches and 3/4 size, and then sometimes I break a little bit of it off so that it's a shorter stem. But you can choose how tall you want your stem to be. And then you're going to grab a hot glue gun and just hot glue it right in place. So I use a glob about that big, and then all I do is push it directly into the center and hold it really firmly to let it dry. And there you have it, your finished pumpkin. I hope you guys like this tutorial. I hope that it worked out for you. Please let me know if you end up bringing them to markets or if you just decorate your home with them. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye!